When the first jets broke the sound barrier in the late 1940s, pilots and engineers realized that going faster could mean the difference between winning a dogfight and never coming home. Today, these jets can fly from New York to Los Angeles in an hour. These are the 10 fastest fighter jets that are still flying somewhere on Earth right now, the absolute kings of raw speed. The MiG-23 was born in the late 1960s because the Soviet Union needed a fighter that could change its wings in flight. Earlier Soviet jets like the MiG-21 had fixed wings and were fantastic in a straight-line sprint or a tight turn, but they couldn't do both well. The MiG-23 has wings that swing back when you want to go fast and spread out when you want to turn sharply or land on short runways. That single idea made it much more useful than the MiG-21 it replaced. Compared to Western jets of the same time like the American F-4 Phantom, the MiG-23 could fly higher and faster while carrying a bigger radar that could see enemy planes from farther away. Its edge was flexibility. It could chase bombers at high altitude and attack tanks on the ground, the next like it did on the 26th of April, 1981, over the Gulf of Sidra. 2 Libyan MiG-23s tried to intercept U.S. Navy F-14 Tomcats, and the MiG-23s at least got into firing position quickly because of their incredible dash speed. Only a handful of air forces still fly the MiG-23, mostly in Syria and North Korea, but the swing wing idea lives on in later Russian designs. The F-4 Phantom is the granddaddy of fast jets still in the air. It first flew in 1958 and was built because the U.S. Navy needed a fighter that could protect aircraft carriers from Soviet bombers hundreds of miles out at sea. The Navy wanted something that could zoom out fast, climb high, and carry long-range missiles. The Phantom was originally designed without a gun because engineers thought missiles would do all the work. They were wrong. The Phantom was a huge leap over its predecessor, the F-8 Crusader. It had 2 engines instead of 1, a second crew member to handle the radar and weapons, and it could carry twice the payload. When the Air Force saw it, they loved it so much they ordered their own versions. Its edge over almost every other jet in the 1960s and 1970s was sheer power and the ability to do every job. Air-to-air combat, bombing, reconnaissance, you name it. The F-4 Phantom had its moment on 10th May, 1972 during the Vietnam War. An Air Force F-4, flown by Captain Steve Ritchie and his weapons officer Chuck de Bellevue, shot down a North Vietnamese MiG-21. Ritchie would go on to become the first American ace of the war, and the Phantom racked up more air-to-air kills than any other Western jet in that conflict. Small numbers of heavily upgraded F-4s fly in Turkey, Greece, and Iran. The Israeli Kafir, which means lion cub in Hebrew, started life as a French Mirage 5. In 1967, France suddenly refused to deliver the Mirage jets Israel had already paid for, so Israel decided to build its own version. They took the basic shape of the Mirage, shortened it a little, and put in a much more powerful American J-79 engine, the same one used in the F-4 Phantom. The result was a small, lightweight fighter that could take off from very short runways and still hit Mach 2.3. Compared to the original Mirage 5, the Kafir could fly farther, carry more weapons, and climb much faster like it did during Operation Opera on 7th June 1981. 8 Israeli F-16s escorted by F-15s destroyed Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor, but the planning and many of the training missions were flown in Kafirs because they had similar performance. The Kafir proved Israel could build world-class fighters even when friends turned their backs. Its edge since the 1970s has always been that it was cheap, easy to maintain, and perfect for small air forces that needed to defend themselves against bigger neighbors. Colombia also flies a dozen upgraded Kafirs today. The F-22 is the only 5th-generation stealth fighter on this list. It was created in the 1990s because the United States wanted a jet that could fly into enemy airspace, destroy their best fighters and radars, and leave without ever being seen. Speed was important, but staying invisible was more important. Compared to its predecessor, the F-15 Eagle, the F-22 has stealth skin that makes it almost disappear from radar, engines that let it cruise above the speed of sound without the bright afterburner flame that gives away position, and sensors that can track dozens of targets at once. Its biggest edge is that it can fly supersonic for long periods without guzzling fuel like a rocket, something called supercruise. No other operational fighter can do that as well. The United States showed the world what the Raptor could do on the 23rd of September 2014 over Syria. An F-22 shot down a Syrian Air Force Su-22 bomber that was about to drop bombs on American-backed rebels. It was the first air-to-air kill for a stealth fighter in history and proved its dominance over any airspace it entered. Only the U.S. Air Force flies the F-22, and only about 180 are still in service. Everyone knows the F-14 from the movie Top Gun. It was built in the late 1960s because the U.S. Navy needed a long-range interceptor that could protect aircraft carriers hundreds of miles from Soviet bombers and cruise missiles. The key feature is the swinging wings, just like the MiG-23, but much more advanced, with the wings moving automatically depending on speed, giving the best of both worlds. Compared to the older F-4 Phantom it replaced on carriers, the Tomcat could fly farther, carry the revolutionary Phoenix missile that could hit 6 targets at once from 100 miles away, and had a radar so powerful it could track 24 targets at the same time. And at Mach 2.34, it's unstoppable. Since the 1970s, the F-14 has demonstrated incredible long-range killing power. Only Iran flies the 40 Tomcats in the world today, keeping them alive with creative engineering because of sanctions. The MiG-29 was the Soviet answer to the American F-16 and F-15. It first flew in 1977 because the Soviet Air Force wanted a small, super-maneuverable fighter that could turn tighter than anything the West had. The MiG-29 looks almost like a twin-engine F-16, but it is built to fight close-in dogfights, where raw turning ability beats everything else at twice the speed of sound. Compared to the older MiG-23, the MiG-29 has fixed wings but much more powerful engines and a helmet-mounted sight that lets the pilot aim missiles just by looking at the target. Its edge is insane agility. At air shows, the MiG-29 can perform the famous Cobra maneuver. It suddenly points its nose almost straight up while still flying forward, then drops back down. It showed that even against overwhelming odds, the MiG-29 could still bite. More than 700 are flying worldwide today. The Su-27 is the big brother of the MiG-29. It was designed at the same time for the same reason, to beat the new American fighters. But the Su-27 was meant to fly long distances and win fights far from home. It is huge for a fighter, almost the size of a World War II bomber, yet it is one of the most agile planes ever built. Compared to earlier Soviet fighters, the Su-27 introduced fly-by-wire controls and engines that can point their thrust nozzles up and down, giving unbelievable turning ability even at low speeds. Its edge is that it combines long legs, huge weapon load, and dogfighting skills, better than almost anything else. Modern versions like the Su-35 are some of the most feared fighters in the world. The Su-27 family is still the backbone of the Russian and Chinese air forces, with over 1,000 in service. The F-15 Eagle is the most successful Western fighter jet ever built. It entered service in 1976 because the U.S. Air Force learned painful lessons in Vietnam. Missiles sometimes miss, and you still need a fast, high-flying jet that can turn and fight with a gun if needed. The Eagle was designed from the beginning to be better than every Soviet fighter in every way. Faster, higher, better radar, more missiles, and unbeatable in a dogfight. Its edge is an unbeaten air-to-air combat record. In almost 50 years, no F-15 has ever been shot down by an enemy aircraft, more than 100 kills and 0 losses. Upgraded F-15EX models are still being delivered to the U.S. Air Force today. The F-15 remains the gold standard for air superiority. The MiG-31 is a monster. It was built in the late 1970s specifically to chase and kill American cruise missiles and high-flying spy planes like the SR-71 Blackbird over the huge empty spaces of Siberia. It is the only fighter in the world designed from the start to fly at almost Mach 3 for long periods. Compared to the MiG-25 it replaced, the MiG-31 has 2 crew members, a much better radar that can track 10 targets and shoot 4 at once from 100 miles away, and engines that don't melt when you push them to the limit. Its edge is raw, brutal speed and the ability to patrol thousands of miles of border at altitudes where almost nothing else can fly. Russia still operates about 200 MiG-31s, many upgraded to carry the hypersonic Kinjal missile. Russia showed its power on the 18th of February 2017 when a MiG-31 intercepted a Norwegian P-3 Orion patrol plane over the Barents Sea at extremely high speed, reminding NATO that Russian airspace is still guarded by the fastest interceptors on Earth. The absolute speed king is the MiG-25 Foxbat. It was created in the early 1960s because the Soviet Union was terrified of the American B-70 bomber that could fly at Mach 3 and 70,000 feet. The MiG-25 was the answer, a jet made mostly of steel, because aluminum melts at those speeds, with two of the most powerful engines ever put in a fighter. It was a massive leap over anything the Soviets had before. Nothing could catch it once it lit its afterburners. Its edge was simple. Nothing in the world could run away from it or shoot it down at full speed. The engines were so powerful that test pilots sometimes broke Mach 3.2, but the plane would be damaged, so Mach 2.83 became the official limit. On the 6th of September 1976, Soviet pilot Viktor Belenko flew his brand new MiG-25 to Japan and asked for asylum. The West finally got to study the plane up close and discovered it was built like a rocket, not a normal fighter. Even today, MiG-25s fly in Syria and possibly Libya, making it the fastest fighter jet still breathing on planet Earth. Remember that these are the fastest fighter jets in active military service around the world. Aircraft primarily designed for air-to-air combat, interception, or multi-role missions that can engage enemy planes directly. If we broaden the scope to any military jets, including reconnaissance, experimental, or test vehicles that have achieved higher speeds and are still operational in testing or museum flown, there are a few that outpace the MiG-25. At Mach 9.6, 7,144 miles per hour, this unmanned experimental aircraft holds the absolute speed record for any air-breathing jet-powered vehicle. Powered by a scramjet engine that compresses incoming air at hypersonic speeds without moving parts. It was dropped from a B-52 bomber and accelerated to its peak in just 10 seconds during a 2004 test flight over the Pacific Ocean. The X-43A wasn't a fighter. It was a proof of concept for hypersonic technology, designed to test how materials and engines handle extreme heat up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not operational today. Only 3 were built, and they're retired to museums. But it exists as the benchmark for what's possible in jet propulsion. No manned or combat-ready version followed directly, but its data influences modern hypersonic projects. There's also the NASA X-15. The X-15 is the fastest manned aircraft ever, a rocket-powered experimental jet that straddled the line between plane and spacecraft. Flown 199 times between 1959 and 1968 from a B-52 mothership, it reached its record in 1967 piloted by William J. Knight. While technically a rocket using XLR-99 engines that burned for just 80 seconds, it had jet-like wings for controlled flight and landing, earning it jet status in aviation history. It was built to explore hypersonic flight for potential military use, like intercepting ICBMs or space access. None are operational now. All 3 prototypes are in museums, one at the National Air and Space Museum, but a few flights still occur with restored engines for demos. It outstrips the MiG-25, but isn't a fighter or in active service. The SR-71, a reconnaissance jet, is the only operational military aircraft to consistently outrun the MiG-25. Its Pratt & Whitney J58 engines, turbojets that shifted to ramjet mode above Mach 2.2, allowed sustained Mach 3+ dashes at 85,000 feet, evading missiles and SAMS during Cold War spy missions. Over 3,000 sorties were flown until retirement in 1998, with a few NASA versions lingering until 1999. A handful remain airworthy in museums like the one at the Udvar-Hazy Center, occasionally flown for events, but none are in active military service. The related YF-12A is a fighter prototype based on the SR-71 design. It hit Mach 3.2 in tests and carried missiles, but only 3 were built in the 1960s, and all are retired. No current fighters match this. The SR-71's speed was for evasion, not dogfighting. True hypersonic fighters remain in development and aren't operational yet, unless you're talking about the Stratolaunch Talon A. a reusable hypersonic test vehicle air-launched from a giant carrier plane. It flew successfully in December 2024 and March 2025 under the Pentagon's MAX-TB program, but it's for testing weapons, not combat. Which fighter jet would you like to add to the list? Tell us in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates. Stay tuned.